Hey everyone, it's Damon, and this is part 2 of my Resident Evil 4 Remake No Running Challenge. There will be a link in the description to part 1 if you haven't seen it yet, but please enjoy. The first bit of castle didn't require much effort since I was essentially just mowing down every enemy in sight. Ashley and I made it inside and met a funny looking guy named Salazar, who immediately sent his lackeys to kill us. I dispatched them easily and we were on to go kill the first Garrador. Gary was pretty easy to take down since I didn't need to be silent anyway, and I wouldn't recommend running in a Garrador fight. Ashley and I solved a few puzzles and we were on to what can be considered the most infamous room in all of Resident Evil 4, Waterhall. Honestly, Waterhall didn't give me any trouble and I wasn't expecting it to. Actually getting grabbed so much was a little annoying, sure, but killing all the enemies is my usual strategy anyway, so Ashley and I were able to raise the bridge to make our escape rather easily. After Waterhall, Ashley decided to scurry away and I was on my own again. In the room with the Red Zealot, I used my usual strategy of pummeling him with rifle bullets to kill him as fast as possible and slowly disposing of the rest of the Ganados afterward, making it so that I didn't have to deal with any of the Plagas enemies. Leon ran into Ada, and I solved the puzzle, leading me right into our first encounter with the Plagas 3 enemies. This one was quite easy to deal with, since I didn't need to run to murder it in cold blood. Next up was the part with the rock-throwing Gigante. I used some tricks to cut down on time and backtracking by opening the gates early, and honestly, the rocks didn't pose as much of an issue as I originally thought. There were some places I was able to stand to avoid the rocks hitting me, and El Gigante went down easily. After killing my second big lad, I found Ashley and the two of us briskly walked through a scary maze of dogs. Somehow we didn't die and were onto one of my favorite locations in the game. Ashley and I sat in some chairs to get the first animal head we needed to progress. Then we moved on to the room with the bridge that would inevitably get lowered by a Ganado if we crossed it. Instead, I said screw that and threw a bomb at the correct time to prevent it from happening at all. This way, I was able to walk across the bridge, grab our second head, and mow down the stray Ganados coming after us. Lastly, Ashley and I headed over to say nighty-night to some knights, and it went relatively well. I was able to shoot their weak points until their helmets would fall off and then kill the whole wave with a flashbang. I did this all 3 times and came away relatively unscathed. Now it was time for what I was the most concerned about in this entire run, Ashley's section. I knew that everything else up until this point had been preparation for this moment, and I knew that if anything were to kill the run, it had to be this. Now, here's how I did it. First, I skipped the bulk of her section by remembering the time to set the clock to in the first room. I got to the elevator and down to the lower level without any trouble, and I was able to use the optimal pattern of bells that I discovered while playing to easily get by this section where you need to open the gate.
So, I have an optimal path for this section that I always take. I'm shitting my goddamn pants. You do not f***ing understand. Oh my f***ing god. This is terrifying!
Ashley's lantern really saved me in this section since I could take my time and prevent the knights from insta-killing me. Honestly, this part was so stressful and I was shitting my pants the whole time. Would recommend doing Ashley's section without running just to make it that much scarier. After rearranging the lanterns and losing our only line of defense, I walked my way through a ton of knights and made my way to our first problem area of this section. The first strategy I tried was going to the right pillar and then straight to the wall, dipping around the knights until I got to the stairs. The problem was that one of the 2 knights around the stairs to the elevator would kill me before I got to my destination. Fortunately, the first time I tried the same strategy on the left side, it worked. That's another difficult section done.
Well, that happens. the strat. Let's f***ing go.
Next was my toughest hurdle and likely this entire challenge. The singular knight on the stairs. The stairs were too narrow to move around him, and I couldn't lead him down the stairs and try to grow around him. I died multiple times during this section and was genuinely convinced that this would be where our run ends. And then, it hit me. While looking for a way to avoid the lone knight, I spotted a broken pillar at the back of the room. So I tried leading the knight down the stairs and juking him around the pillar, and it worked! We had passed our final test! After stressfully walking up the stairs with the knight right on our asses, I encountered another one that I died to a few times before realizing that the door was right there and I was being an idiot. In the next area, the library, I got incredibly lucky by catching on two close together knights and just barely missing their swings, allowing me to walk past. I'm not sure if this can be replicated, but either way, I walked into the last hallway and up the stairs to safety, proving that Ashley's section can be beaten without running. In the next area, I had to deal with copious amounts of Novistadors, but I got past quite easily just by shooting them all. Next up was Double Gary, where I had to fight 2 Gyarados and a horde of Gyarados. I was quite worried about how much healing I'd have to use because generally I struggle with this section on that front, but honestly, this was the cleanest Double Gary I've ever had. The reason for that was because I was crouching for most of it, leading me to dodge under pretty much every swipe of the Gyarados claws. My general strategy for this room is to use the sniper rifle to get rid of the Gyarados as fast as possible. After this, I was dropped down a scary pit by Salazar and dealt with a few more Novis. Next up was Verdugo, which I was slightly concerned about. I knew this since door skip had recently been patched, and I wasn't able to use a rifle to clip into the elevator and be immune to all of its swings, that I'd have to use a rocket launcher. Since you can only buy 1 rocket launcher per section of the game, of which there are 3, this would end up using my only get-out-of-jail-free card for Castle. I didn't have much of a choice though, since otherwise I don't think I would have survived this section. I ran up to where the Verdugo first spawns and led him around a corner until he reached me. I knife parried his swings and slowly led him to the ice shower, pressed the button to freeze him, and got the perfect opportunity to rocket him into oblivion. That was Verdugo done. Next up was the section with Luis. This part was pretty easy. The only difference from a casual playthrough is that I had to take it slow and kill everything in our way to avoid dying. We grabbed the TNT and moved on to the wall we needed to blow up and right into a surprise issue. When dreaming up this challenge, I had never given this part a second thought, but when attempting it for the first time, I wasn't able to get out of the way of the boulders fast enough. After a few deaths, I tried something new. I turned Leon away from where I needed to place the TNT and backed him up just enough so that I was as far away as I could be while still being able to access the interact prompt. Then I placed the TNT and immediately walked over to the alcove that Luis had been standing in. On the first try of this strategy, I made it. Luis and I strolled over to the double Gigante fight, and honestly, it was pretty easy. I fought one of these guys before and I had no problem fighting too. I thought it may be difficult to walk fast enough over to the panel to drop them into the lava, but I didn't end up far enough away for that to pose an issue. Luis and I rode a minecart and killed some guys, but I won't talk about it much because this section isn't necessary to run in at all. There was no running needed in the Novi section either, and I had finally made my way to the first Krauser fight. I thought this was posed more of an issue, but this is the easiest he's ever went down for me. It really reminded me of Krauser's boss fight in the original.
Oh shit. Oh, well, that was easy.
Leon's boyfriend Luis kicked the bucket and it was time for Clock Tower. I went ahead and grabbed the golden egg in the throne room for the upcoming boss fight with Salazar and sauntered my way into another area of worry. Now, I won't lie to you guys, I lost the footage for this. My computer ran out of space right before I entered the clock tower, so OBS cut the recording off. I've gone back to capture the same strategy, but I will say that I didn't do an entire no-running playthrough up until that point. I hope you understand, and if you decide to try this yourself, then you'll figure out that it is possible. Now, what I did for this section was kill all the Ganados on the first floor and whoever else I could lead down there. This cleared things up for me a bit while I made my way to blow up the head of the Salazar statue. After that, I killed the rest of the ganados in my way. On to the part that I thought may give me some trouble. On the stairs leading up to the lift, there's a ganado at the top who sends down huge spiky metal balls to kill you, Donkey Kong style. I wasn't sure whether it would be possible to make it up the stairs, even with the small areas to stand in that you could avoid the ball's hitbox. I started by using the grenades I had saved up to either kill or lure down every enemy on the staircase, leaving only the ganado at the top. Then, after triggering the first spiky ball, I walked.
Challenge videos?
What?
No jumping. Specifically in Kirby. Because of the way people get around doing it.
Yeah.
It's either one of two abilities that gets around it. It's either sword or fighter.
I made it all the way up to the top of the staircase, and I was on to lift. The lift was rather easy since I could brute force my way through it using the striker, and we had arrived at the final hurdle standing between us and Island, Salazar. Now, I would have been worried about this fight if the devs hadn't thrown in a little fun Easter egg that if you throw a golden egg at Salazar's weak point, he would lose 70% of his health and get downed, leaving room for you to mag dump into him until he died. With that, Salazar was dead, and the second section of Resident Evil 4 Remake is officially possible to clear without running.